Why do Brazilian houses look like grey concrete boxes? I remember when I first moved to Brazil and I was driving around the neighborhood and I was looking at the houses, and all I could see were these grey box houses made out of bricks and cement render. They had a flat roof and massive windows and massive doors. And the impression I had was these buildings looked like mini office buildings or banks or clinics, and also actually a bit similar to the houses I used to build in Minecraft. And I asked my wife, why are all the houses designed like this? Do they deal better with the hot, humid climate and the heavy rain? And my wife said, no, actually, I think this design makes it worse. Now, these houses actually get hotter and provide less protection against rain and humidity than a traditionally designed house. And I was getting very confused, and I was like, well, why do they build it like this? And she said, oh, it's because it's cheaper to build and people really like this type of design. And I just looked at her very confused. But then this week I thought, why don't I investigate and really get to the bottom of why Brazilians build houses like this? And that's what I'm going to do in this video. But first of all, let me just say that not all Brazilian houses look like grey concrete boxes. This trend of building houses like boxes started like 10-20 years ago. So if you drive around the neighborhood with older houses, there you'll see houses with a more traditional design with pitched roofs, normal size windows and doors, and also some wooden houses as well. And also it's not just Brazil that has this trend of houses being built like this. So if you look at Sweden and Scandinavia, there you don't see it that much. And that's partly because it's a very cold country, it snows a lot. So they build houses with pitched roofs to stop the snow accumulating on the roof. And they don't want massive windows and doors because they know that will let out heat and make the house less efficient. And if you look in the UK, again, this type of house isn't very common. But if you look at the houses in the countries in the south of Europe, like Portugal and Spain, there I've seen quite a few of these houses. And also in some of the states in the US, especially California, there I've seen this trend of a lot of box houses being built. But in Brazil, I kind of feel like this is at another level, because if you drive around some new neighborhoods and some new gated communities, 90 to 95% of the houses will all be grey box-shaped houses. Okay, so now let's go through the characteristics a bit more and understand why they build them like this. Okay, so let's start with the walls. And nearly all of these houses are built with a single brick wall. The bricks are usually hollow. And then they have concrete beams and pillars around it to give it strength. And then they put a cement render on the outside and the inside of the wall. And then they paint it some sort of grey colour. It can be light or dark grey. And the problem with this is that these cement walls do not deal very well with hot temperatures. And so the sun hits the cement walls the whole day, heating it up. And because the outside walls aren't cavity walls, so two walls with insulation in between, this hot cement wall just slowly releases the heat into the house and makes the inside of the house really hot. And so people who live in houses like this need to have the air conditioning on a lot in summertime to cool the inside of a house down. And then you have the opposite problem in wintertime. So in the south in Brazil, it can get a bit cold. It can go down to 0 degrees Celsius. And you have to heat these houses a lot with air conditioning or electric radiators, because you lose a lot of the hot air because it goes through the thin cement walls. And then also another problem is the humidity. So here in the south of Brazil, it can get very humid, up to 100 degrees humidity in the air. And if you have a sudden change in temperature, which happens a fair bit, so say it's been a bit cold and then suddenly the outside temperature increases a lot, then you can get some serious condensation on the inside of the walls of the house. And that's because the cement walls are still cold, because they take time to warm up. And so the hot air hits the cold cement walls and you can see condensation running down the walls. My wife says that the walls are crying. And this causes a lot of problems because things hanging on the wall and touching the walls, like wardrobes and cupboards, they get damp and then start getting moldy as well. So this also can be a real problem. And then if you look at the flat roof, so these are built in a similar way to the walls. So you have concrete beams, and then in between them you have hollow bricks, and then you have cement render on both sides, and then they put something on top of that to make it waterproof. Or sometimes they put metal sheeting on top of a cement with a slight angle in order for the rainwater to run off. So with these cement roofs, you have the same problem as the cement walls. in terms of them letting through a lot of the heat in summertime and the cold in winter. Because with a traditional house with a pitched roof, you have an attic or a space in between the roof and the ceiling, and that acts as insulation to stop the heat or the cold going into the house. But then also not having an attic causes another problem, and that is you don't have any space to store things. So I mean, I love my attic. I store a lot of stuff up there, and I don't know what I would do if I didn't have the attic. I mean, I guess if I had a basement, that would be just as good, but most of these houses don't have a basement either, and so storage can be a real problem. And also finally, pitch roofs usually extend a bit beyond the walls, so you have this overhang part or eave. And this looks nice, but it also serves a purpose in protecting the wall from the sunshine and also from the rain. And with most of these box houses, you don't have that overhang, and so the sun hits directly at the wall, heating it up. And then also the rain hits the entire wall and the windows as well. And this causes some problems, like you always have to shut the windows in these box houses when it starts raining. Otherwise rainwater will get in the house through the windows. And also if the wall's getting a lot of sunshine and constantly wet, cement render starts cracking and the paint starts peeling. So you have to, on a regular basis, fill the cracks and repaint the walls. Now this would be a lot less of a problem if the houses were built out of dense bricks and there was no cement render and it wasn't painted. Then not having an overhang will be less of an issue in terms of cracking and repainting. But using these types of bricks is not very common, and so you have these problems of constantly having to repaint the render. And another feature of these box houses are the large windows. The Brazilians love to add really large windows to these houses, stretching from the ground all the way up to the ceiling. And these large windows can look nice. I mean, I personally just think a combination of a box house with large windows makes it look like an office building or some other commercial building like a bank. But also these large windows create some practical problems as well. The first one is the lack of privacy and the fact that people walking on the street outside can see into your house and see everything that you're doing. Now this wouldn't be a problem if you're building your house on a large plot of land and you've got trees and bushes and walls around the house. Then yeah, you wouldn't have any problems with privacy. But the majority of these houses are built on relatively small plots of land. They're not surrounded by big walls, and the street outside is pretty close to the house as well, and so then you have this privacy problem. Some people try and solve it with reflective window film, which kind of works during the day, but with most of them in the evening, when it's lighter inside than it is outside, then you can still see through the windows and see everything that's going on. And others put really big blinds and curtains covering the whole windows. But then I just find it a bit funny that people invested so much money in these massive windows to bring in lots of light, but then they spend most of the time with the blinds or the curtains closed because they don't want the neighbors to look in. And in Brazil, most of these windows are just single pane or single glazed, so they're not double glazed or triple glazed, and so that means that they don't insulate very well, and so you waste a lot of energy because a lot of the cool air from the air conditioning inside escapes out through the windows, or vice versa in winter. And then the other large feature about these houses are the large doors as well. And so you see a lot of these houses with massive doors. Sometimes if the house is 2 floors and the door stretches to the top of the 2nd floor, I just think that these big doors feel a bit out of place when the actual house isn't that big. I mean, I guess if you're building a mansion, I guess it kind of fits in. But if you're building like a 100 square meter, 3-bedroom house, then these big doors I just don't think fit in. And some of these doors have a central pivot as well. So it swivels in the middle, and so you have to either walk to the left or the right of the door in order to get in. And I also find that a bit unusual, and also a bit restrictive if you want to carry big things through the door. And also some of these doors can weigh a lot. So just imagine trying to do some maintenance on the door. You have to call in a whole team in order to dismantle it. It's not just a case of, yourself removing a few hinges. No, the maintenance will be a lot more complicated. And then finally, a lot of these box houses are bungalows, so just 1 floor. And the plot of land isn't that big. And so what happens is that the house takes up nearly the whole plot of land, and so the front and the back gardens are very small. And for a Swede I find that a bit strange, because I put a lot of value on that big garden. And when I see this, I always think, why don't they build a house with 2 floors or a basement or something, and therefore the house would take up less of a land, and then you'd have a bigger garden. And when I ask people about that, a lot of them say that they don't want to have gardens because a garden requires a lot of work and cost as well to employ a gardener. And also a lot of these houses are in gated communities, and these communities have a shared swimming pool, a playground, tennis courts, and so people feel they don't need their own garden because they can just use the community facilities. So then the question is, why do people build or buy houses like this when it has problems with the heat, humidity, and a lot of maintenance with the render cracking and needing repainting? And one of the reasons is money. So in general, it's less expensive to build a box house than it is a traditional looking house. And that is because it's cheaper to build a box house with a single brick wall, cement roof, than it is to build a traditional house with a pitched roof and cavity walls. So to build these box houses, you can employ any builder, because they all basically know how to mix concrete and cement and put some bricks up. So you don't need any specialized tradespeople like carpenters to build a pitched roof or anything. And also you just need simple materials as well, which you can find anywhere in Brazil. So all you need is sand, cement, bricks and lime to build the foundation, the walls and the roof. And these materials are a lot less expensive than if you wanted to build a house out of steel frame and have a pitched roof with wood and roof tiles, or have cavity walls with plaster or drywall, because all of these materials just add to the cost. And the reduced cost of construction isn't just the use of simpler materials, it's also the fact that you can build these houses quicker than a traditional house, which means you end up spending less money on builders and labor, and that results also in some savings. And if we look at the average cost to build a house here in Brazil, so they have this thing called CUB, so C-U-B, and that is the average cost per square meter of building a house. And so every region does its own calculation of the average cost every month. So if you just choose the average cost in Florianopolis and Santa Catarina, and so they're saying that the average cost per square meter of building a medium spec residential house is 3,019 reais per square meter. And this cost has increased a lot over the years. So you can see this graph here. Now this shows the average cost for the whole of Brazil. So it's not going to be in line with the cost I showed you earlier for Florianopolis. But you can see the trend here, how the costs have gone up, especially after 2020 when the costs really spiked. And so Brazilians building their house, they can see the costs increasing. And so they're looking for ways to reduce it. And one of the ways to do that is to build a box house. But then on the other hand, putting in these large windows and large doors is more expensive than just putting in normal windows and doors. So that's a bit counterintuitive in terms of reducing costs of the build. And then also the big problem is that, the cost of construction overall might be lower for a box house, but then the cost of maintenance will be higher in many cases, fixing cracks in the render and repainting it, and also in terms of running the air conditioning a lot more because the houses get so hot. But also another reason why people are building and buying these types of houses, that's because they really like this type of design. So a lot of people look down on traditional houses. They kind of see that as something old, and like their parents or their grandparents had a house like that, but they want something more modern and minimalist and stylish. And so they feel that these box houses fits this criteria. And also many think that these box houses are very impressive as well. So they see the big mansions overseas, California and the south of Europe, where millionaires build these mansions with boxy features. And people want to replicate that, but on a smaller scale. And it's definitely possible to do that. It's just that usually these mansions are built with high quality materials. So definitely with cavity walls, insulation in the roofs, double or triple glazing in the windows. So they're able to build these houses in this style, but still be efficient. But here in Brazil, they try and copy that style, but build it in a lot simpler way, and that can cause some problems. And then a third reason why these box houses are so popular is that people want to maximize the space. Because the format of the house is in a square format, they can utilize every centimeter of the space, while more traditional houses, They can have like bay windows, can be a bit difficult to use because they're not a square shape. Also the pitched roofs sometimes can result in the ceiling being pitched as well, especially on the second floor. And that can cause some problems in terms of putting in furniture as well. So it's a lot easier to put in furniture and decorate a house and use every bit of space. Fourth reason why people build houses like this is that people in general see these houses as high-end houses. So if you go to an estate agent and you talk to them about the houses available for sale, whenever there's a box house, most estate agents say, oh, this is a high-end luxury house. But when they say that, I look at them and go, well, actually, didn't this box house actually cost less to build than these traditional houses with pitched roofs and more traditional features? And they go, oh, no, that's not right. No, oh, no, these boxes are definitely a lot more high-end. And so construction companies are kind of incentivized to build houses like this because they know they'll be able to sell it for more than if they build a traditional house. And then individuals as well building their own house, they also think that, oh, I'm going to build a box house because if I need to sell in the future, then it'll be easier and I'll get more money. Okay, so that was me trying to explain what these box houses are like here in Brazil and why they're built. But like I said at the beginning, not all Brazilian houses are like this, but it definitely is a trend at the moment. And also this is just my opinion, people have different tastes, and obviously everyone's allowed to design and build whatever house they want to. So if you have a box house, don't get offended by this video, it's just me sharing my opinion. So if you like this video, please leave a like, subscribe. If you've got any comments, leave them in the comment section below. So thanks for watching, until next time.